My rich roommate pretended to be poor for sympathy, then scammed thousands from our friends. So I destroyed her reputation, exposed her lies, and flipped her entire scam network against her in the most brutal way imaginable. When I got randomly assigned to room with Sage freshman year, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. I showed up with my secondhand mini fridge and thrift store bedding, terrified everyone at this expensive private college would judge me. But there was Sage, in ripped jeans and a faded band tee, talking about her scholarship and how she barely afforded the meal plan. "Thank God you're normal," she said, helping me carry in dollar store organizers. I was scared I'd get stuck with some rich girl who doesn't understand budgeting. We bonded immediately. I taught her my system for stretching $20 of groceries. She showed me apps for finding free campus food. We shared everything from ramen recipes to textbooks. For the first time since arriving, I didn't feel like I was drowning. Things got weird second semester. Sage suggested we throw a party to make friends. The theme would be starving artist chic, which made me uncomfortable. But she insisted it was about owning our truth. I spent 3 weeks planning on a shoestring budget, made decorations from dollar store supplies, negotiated vendor discounts, cooked all the food myself. Sage kept forgetting her wallet. "I'll Venmo you later," became her catchphrase. She never did. The day before the party, I found her throwing away my handmade centerpieces. "These look too obviously homemade," she said. "People will think we're trying too hard." I stayed up until 4 a.m. making new ones while she posted Instagram stories about planning the most authentic college party ever. The party was packed. Rich kids showed up thinking our broke theme was hilarious. They loved my decorations and kept asking who planned everything. Every time someone complimented me, Sage would swoop in and change the subject. Then came her toast. "I want to talk about real struggle," Sage announced, holding up a secondhand coffee maker she'd bought as a prop. "My roommate and I share this because we can't afford separate ones. She makes her sad instant coffee in it every morning." The crowd laughed. My stomach twisted. "Let me tell you about real poverty," she continued. "It's calculating cost per wear." She pointed at me. "She saved for 3 months for that dress. Can you imagine?" The laughter got louder. Someone yelled, "Make us coffee in the struggle machine." Sage grinned. "Of course. I use it every day." She confidently walked over and lifted the coffee maker. Her face changed immediately. It was just an empty box. "Oh, I returned that yesterday," I said calmly, "since it was just a prop you bought for tonight." Sage's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "No, we use it every day." "Really? Because the receipt shows you bought it yesterday at 4 p.m. from Williams-Sonoma for $400. The room went silent. "Actually, since we're sharing struggle stories," I continued, pulling out my phone, "this is the text where Sage asked me to look extra poor tonight, so she'd seem more authentic." The rich kids turned on her instantly. "You made me Venmo you for gas money. You started a GoFundMe for textbooks. I donated to your struggling student fund." I looked Sage straight in the eye. "The $347.83 you owe me for this party would really help with my textbooks, actually." The room erupted. People were checking their Venmo history, comparing notes on times Sage had borrowed money. She stood there surrounded by evidence while everyone shouted. She'd been scamming half the people there, taking money for fake emergencies while secretly living luxuriously. I left my own party and went back to my room. An hour later, Sage burst in. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed. "How could I tell the truth?" She started throwing things into bags, ranting about how I'd ruined her life. I sat on my thrift store bedding and watched her pack thousands of dollars worth of clothes she'd hidden in her closet. "This isn't over," she said before storming out. That was 3 days ago. She hasn't been back, but her stuff is still here, including a letter I found this morning from the dean of students, requesting a meeting about serious allegations regarding fraudulent behavior. I'm supposed to meet with them tomorrow. The thing is, I'm not the one who reported her, which means someone else at that party did. Someone with enough pull to get the administration involved immediately. I stared at the letter, my hands trembling slightly. The dean wanted to see me at 2 p.m. sharp. My phone buzzed with texts from people at the party, all asking variations of the same question. Did I know what was happening with Sage? I grabbed my backpack and headed to my morning economics class, trying to focus on anything except the meeting. Professor Chen droned on about supply and demand curves while I doodled nervously in my notebook. The girl next to me, Sammy, kept glancing over. She'd been at the party. "Hey," she whispered. "I heard Sage's dad is on the board of trustees." My pen stopped moving. That explained why she'd gotten into this school despite her grades being average at best. It also explained the designer clothes hidden in her closet, the ones she claimed were gifts from a rich aunt. After class, I walked across campus to the administration building. My secondhand sneakers squeaked on the polished marble floors. The receptionist looked up from her computer and smiled sympathetically. "The dean is ready for you." Dean Williams sat behind a massive oak desk, surrounded by diplomas and awards. 2 other people were in the room, a woman from student affairs, and a man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Please sit," Dean Williams said, gesturing to a leather chair. "This is Mrs. Chen from Student Affairs and Mr. Harrison, Sage's father." My stomach dropped. Sage's father stared at me with cold eyes. He had the same sharp features as his daughter, the same calculating look. "We've received multiple complaints about fraudulent behavior," Dean Williams began, spreading papers across his desk. "Students have provided evidence of monetary transactions, false claims of financial hardship, and what appears to be systematic deception." Mrs. Chen opened a folder. 17 students have come forward so far. The total amount of money involved exceeds $8,000. $8,000. I'd had no idea it was that much. "Miss," Dean Williams looked at me directly, "we need to understand your involvement. Several students mentioned you were her roommate and seemed to be collaborating." "Collaborating?" I sat up straighter. I'd been eating ramen for months while she was scamming people. "She owes me money too." Mr. Harrison finally spoke. "My daughter called me crying, saying you set her up, that you orchestrated that party specifically to humiliate her." I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady despite my racing heart. Here's our text conversation from the past 3 months. Every time she forgot her wallet, every excuse about waiting for her scholarship money, every promise to pay me back. Mrs. Chen took my phone, scrolling through the messages. Her eyebrows rose higher with each swipe. "I also have receipts," I continued, pulling a folder from my backpack, "for everything I bought for that party. For the groceries she said she'd split. For the textbook we were supposed to share but she never paid her half." Dean Williams examined the receipts while Mr. Harrison's face grew redder. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "My wife and I pay full tuition. Sage doesn't need to scam anyone for pocket money." "Then where did the money go?" Mrs. Chen asked quietly. The room fell silent. Mr. Harrison's jaw clenched. Dean Williams cleared his throat. We've also discovered that Sage has been receiving a need-based scholarship despite your family's financial status. That's fraud against the institution itself. I watched Mr. Harrison's face cycle through emotions. Anger, disbelief, and finally, shame. He slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. We've been getting calls all morning, Mrs. Chen added. Parents demanding to know how this happened. Some are threatening legal action. What happens now? I asked. Dean Williams folded his hands. Sage will be withdrawn from the university effective immediately. The scholarship fraud alone is grounds for expulsion. As for the money she took from students, she'll pay it back, Mr. Harrison said through gritted teeth. Every penny, with interest. And my roommate situation? I asked. You'll have the room to yourself for the remainder of the semester, Mrs. Chen said. No additional charges. The meeting ended with me signing a statement about what I'd witnessed. Mr. Harrison left without another word, his phone already pressed to his ear. I could hear him shouting at someone, probably his lawyer. I walked back to my dorm in a daze. Students stared and whispered as I passed. Word had already spread. Inside my room, Sage's belongings still cluttered her side. Designer bags peeked out from under her bed. A MacBook Pro sat on her desk next to a collection of expensive skincare products. My phone rang. Unknown number. You ruined my life. Sage's voice was hoarse from crying. My parents cut me off. They're making me get a job. A real job. At a grocery store. You ruined your own life, I said calmly. I just stopped being your prop. This isn't over, she hissed. I'll make you pay for this. With what money? I asked, but she'd already hung up. I sat on my bed, the same thrift store bedding I'd been embarrassed about months ago. Outside my window, students hurried between classes, their designer backpacks and latest smartphones glinting in the sun. For the first time since arriving at this school, I didn't feel inferior. I'd survived on my own merit, without lying or cheating anyone. My phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. Someone had sent me $347.83 with the note, "From all of us who were at the party. You earned this." Then another notification, and another. By the time I looked up from my phone, I'd received over $2,000 from various students, all with messages of support and admiration. The door burst open. It was Sammy from my economics class, along with several other students I recognized from the party. "We're taking you out to dinner," Sammy announced. "Somewhere actually nice, not the dining hall." "I can't accept." "You absolutely can," another girl interrupted. "You saved us from losing even more money to that con artist. Plus, we need to hear the whole story, the real story." As they dragged me out of my room, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Same secondhand clothes, same tired face from working 2 campus jobs, same person who'd arrived here feeling like she didn't belong. But something had changed. I'd found my voice, and I'd used it. The next morning, I woke up to find Sage's things gone. Maintenance had cleared everything out overnight. The room felt bigger, brighter. I stretched out on my bed, enjoying the space. My phone rang. Dean Williams' office. "Can you come in this afternoon?" the receptionist asked. "The dean has a proposition for you." I arrived to find Dean Williams smiling, a rare sight. "We've been impressed by how you handled this situation," he began. "Your documentation, your composure, your integrity. We have an opening in the student affairs office, part-time, but it pays well. Interested?" I stared at him, speechless. "A real job, on campus, that would actually help with expenses. The other students trust you," he continued. "We need someone who understands the challenges our scholarship students face. Someone who can spot when others might be taking advantage of them." "Yes," I said immediately. "Absolutely yes." Walking out of the administration building, I felt lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Mrs. Harrison, Sage's mother. I wanted to apologize for my daughter's behavior and thank you for bringing it to light. We had no idea. The money she owes you will be in your account by end of day." I stopped in the middle of the quad, students flowing around me like a river around a stone. 3 months ago, I'd arrived here convinced I was the imposter, the one who didn't belong. Turns out I'd been rooming with the real imposter all along. My economics textbook weighed heavy in my backpack, the one I'd bought secondhand and covered in clear contact paper to protect it. Tomorrow, I'd start my new job. Tonight, I had a paper to write and laundry to do with the quarters I'd saved up. But first, I was going to buy myself a real coffee. Not instant, not from a secondhand machine. A real coffee from the campus cafe, paid for with money I'd earned honestly. As I walked toward the cafe, I passed a group of freshmen touring the campus. One girl clutched a secondhand backpack, her eyes wide with worry as she looked at the designer everything around her. I recognized that look, that fear. "Hey," I called out. "Welcome to campus. If you ever need tips on making it work here on a budget, I'm your girl." Her face lit up with relief. "Really? That would be amazing. I'm Ailey, by the way. Nice to meet you, Ailey. First rule, never be ashamed of what you can afford. Second rule, document everything." As I explained my system for finding free food on campus, I realized something. Sage had been wrong about one thing. We hadn't bonded over being poor. We'd bonded over her lies and my truth. And in the end, the truth had won. The next few days passed in a blur of congratulations and newfound respect. I settled into my single room, spreading my belongings across both sides for the first time. The student affairs job started immediately. They needed someone to help process the flood of complaints still coming in about Sage. On my 3rd day at the job, Mrs. Chen called me into her office. "We've discovered something concerning," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "Sage created multiple fake charity drives using official university letterhead. The money went directly to her personal accounts." I flipped through the documents. Fundraisers for hurricane victims, scholarship funds for underprivileged students, even a memorial fund for a fictional deceased professor. Each one had collected thousands. "We need you to help identify any students who might have been particularly vulnerable to her schemes," Mrs. Chen continued. "Your insight could prevent this from happening again." That afternoon, while organizing files, I noticed something odd. Several complaint forms mentioned Sage promising to fix their financial aid issues for a fee. She'd been charging desperate students to help them navigate the system, then pocketing the money without doing anything. My phone vibrated. Unknown number again. "You think you're so smart," Sage's voice dripped venom, "but you have no idea what you've started. Sage, you need to stop calling. I know things about you. Things that would destroy your precious new reputation." The line went dead. I tried to shake off the unease, but her words lingered. What could she possibly know? Over the next week, strange things started happening. My campus meal plan suddenly showed a zero balance, despite having funds the day before. The financial aid office claimed I'd withdrawn my application for next semester's grants. My work-study hours were mysteriously reduced to nothing in the system. Each time, I had to spend hours fixing the glitches. The IT department couldn't explain how my accounts kept getting compromised, but I knew. Sage might have lost her physical access to campus, but she still had friends here. Friends who owed her favors or feared what she might reveal about them. One morning, I found a manila envelope slipped under my door. Inside were photos. Me at the thrift store, me counting coins at the laundromat, me working my second job at the campus copy center. Each photo had a caption written in Sage's handwriting. Still pretending to be better than everyone else? I brought the photos to campus security, but they said without proof Sage took them, there was nothing they could do. She wasn't allowed on campus, but that didn't mean she couldn't send others. The real escalation came when I started my shift at Student Affairs. Mrs. Chen met me at the door, her face grave. "There's been an allegation," she said. "Someone reported that you were Sage's partner in the fraud schemes." My blood ran cold. "What? Who reported this?" "Anonymous tip, but they provided screenshots of text messages between you and Sage, discussing how to split the money from various scams." She showed me the screenshots. They were convincing. My phone number, messages that sounded like me, timestamps that matched when I'd actually been texting Sage, but I'd never sent these messages. "These are fake," I said, my voice shaking. "She must have used some app or—" "I believe you," Mrs. Chen interrupted, "but the administration needs to investigate. You'll need to step back from your position until this is resolved." I left the office feeling numb. Without the job, I couldn't afford next semester. Sage knew exactly where to hit me. That night, Sammy knocked on my door. "I heard what happened," she said. "This is insane. Everyone knows you're not involved." "Apparently not everyone," I replied, showing her the fake screenshots. Sammy studied them carefully. "Wait, look at this one. It mentions meeting at the North Campus Starbucks, but that closed for renovations 2 months before this timestamp." My heart leaped. Proof the messages were fake. We spent hours going through each screenshot, finding inconsistencies. Sammy, who was majoring in computer science, helped me document how the metadata had been altered. The next morning, I presented our findings to Mrs. Chen and Dean Williams. They seemed relieved but cautious. "This helps your case," Dean Williams said, "but we need to understand how Sage is still orchestrating this from off-campus." "She has help," I said. "Other students who were part of her schemes or who she has leverage over." Mrs. Chen nodded. "We've been thinking the same thing. Would you be willing to help us identify them?" It was risky. If Sage had allies on campus, exposing them would make me a bigger target, but I couldn't let her win. Over the following days, I worked with campus security to trace the anonymous tip. The IT department discovered it came from a computer in the library, logged in with stolen credentials. Security footage showed a nervous freshman named Than accessing the terminal. When questioned, he broke down immediately. "Sage said she'd expose my cheating scandal if I didn't help," he sobbed. "I paid her to write my essays last year. She has proof." More dominoes fell. A sophomore named Daniel admitted to taking photos of me for Sage in exchange for her silence about his fake internship on his resume. Another student, McJonathan, had been giving Sage access to the student information system using his work-study position in IT. Each revelation painted a picture of Sage's network. Students trapped by their own small deceptions, forced to do her bidding or risk exposure. She'd built an empire of manipulation that extended far beyond simple fraud. But the biggest shock came when security reviewed footage from the night someone had tampered with my meal plan. The person using the administrative terminal was someone I'd considered a friend, Endra from my sociology class. She'd been at the party, had even contributed to the Venmo collection for me. When confronted, Endra's story chilled me. "Sage has a video of me shoplifting," she said. "It was stupid. Just makeup from the campus store. But if it gets out, I'll lose my scholarship." She said if I helped her mess with your accounts, she'd delete it. The web of blackmail was staggering. Sage had spent years collecting leverage on vulnerable students, building a network she could activate even from afar. But now that network was unraveling. Dean Williams called an emergency meeting. "We've identified 12 students being blackmailed by Sage," he announced. "We're offering them amnesty if they cooperate fully with our investigation." The relief on campus was palpable as students came forward, freed from Sage's grip. But I knew she wouldn't give up easily. The retaliation came swift and harsh. My parents received a letter claiming I was under investigation for fraud. My high school got an anonymous tip that I'd cheated on my SATs. Every scholarship and grant I'd ever received was contacted with concerns about my integrity. Each claim was false and eventually disproven, but the damage to my reputation was real. I spent every free moment defending myself, providing documentation, writing explanations. The stress was overwhelming. Then came the confrontation I'd been dreading. I was walking back from the library when a car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing Sage's mother. "Get in," she said. It wasn't a request. Against my better judgment, I climbed into the back seat. Mrs. Harrison looked exhausted. Designer clothes wrinkled, perfect makeup smudged. "I need you to understand something," she began. "My daughter is sick. She's always been sick. We've spent fortunes on therapy, medications, interventions. Nothing worked. That doesn't excuse— I'm not excusing anything," she interrupted. "I'm explaining. Sage learned early that manipulation got her what she wanted. We enabled it by always bailing her out, always believing her lies over others' truths." She pulled out a thick folder. "These are records of every person she's hurt, going back to middle school. Every family we've had to pay off. Every school we've had to leave. You're the first person to ever hold her accountable. Why are you telling me this?" "Because she won't stop. She's obsessed with destroying you now. You took away her power, and she can't handle it." Mrs. Harrison met my eyes in the rearview mirror. "I'm warning you. Be careful. She's planning something bigger." "What kind of something?" "I don't know. She won't tell me, but she's been in contact with some unsavory people online, people who specialize in ruining lives digitally." My blood ran cold. In today's world, digital destruction could be permanent. One fake scandal, one doctored photo going viral, and my future could be over. Mrs. Harrison drove me back to campus in silence. As I got out, she handed me a business card. "My lawyer. If things escalate, call him. It's the least I can do." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every notification on my phone made me jump. I'd gone from exposing a fraud to being hunted by someone with nothing left to lose. The next morning brought a new crisis. Someone had created a website, The Truth About My Name, filled with twisted versions of real events. It painted me as a calculating manipulator who'd framed my innocent roommate. The site used real photos from my social media, real details about my life, but spun them into a damaging narrative. My inbox flooded with hate mail. People who didn't know the real story believed the site. Some of my newer friendships started pulling away, unsure what to believe. But the worst part was how professionally it was done. This wasn't Sage working alone anymore. She'd hired someone good, someone who knew how to optimize for search engines, how to make lies look like journalism. Sammy found me crying in my room. "Hey, we're going to fight this," she said firmly. "I've got friends in the computer science department. We'll trace who built this site." "What's the point?" I asked. "Even if we prove it's fake, the damage is done. This is what people will find when they Google me forever. Not if we bury it with the truth," Sammy said. "Come on, we're going to document everything. Every receipt, every witness statement, every piece of evidence. We'll create our own site with the real story." We worked through the night, building a comprehensive timeline of Sage's fraud. Other students contributed their stories, evidence, and support. By morning, we had a website that told the complete truth, backed by irrefutable documentation. But Sage wasn't done. The next attack was more personal. She'd somehow gotten access to my old foster care records, documents that were supposed to be sealed. Suddenly, details about my childhood that I'd never shared with anyone were being spread around campus. The violation felt like being stripped naked in public. These were wounds I'd spent years healing, traumas I'd worked hard to overcome, and now they were gossip fodder. I nearly broke. Sitting in my room, staring at posts mocking my past, I considered leaving school entirely. Maybe Sage had won. Maybe someone like me didn't belong here after all. Then my phone rang. It was Ailey, the freshman I'd helped on her first day. "I just wanted you to know," she said, "that you inspired me. When I felt like I didn't belong here, you showed me I did. Whatever people are saying, it doesn't change who you are or what you've done for others." After she hung up, more calls came. Students I'd helped through the student affairs office. People who'd been scammed by Sage and found justice because of my courage. Each one reminded me why I couldn't give up. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Mr. Harrison called me directly. "I've had enough," he said. "Sage crossed a line accessing your sealed records. That's a federal crime. I'm cutting off all her resources and cooperating fully with authorities." "Why now?" I asked. "Because I realize we're not helping her by enabling this behavior. She needs to face real consequences." He paused. "I've hired a cybersecurity firm to trace the website and document tampering. We'll have evidence for prosecution within days." The investigation moved quickly. The cybersecurity firm traced the website to a reputation management company that operated in legal gray areas. They'd been paid through a complex chain of transactions, but the trail led back to Sage. More importantly, they found evidence that Sage had paid a corrupt social worker for access to my foster care records. That elevated her actions from harassment to multiple felonies. I met with prosecutors who were building a case. The list of charges was extensive: identity theft, computer fraud, harassment, bribery of a public official, and more. Sage had escalated herself right into serious legal trouble. But even facing arrest, she made one last, desperate play. I was in the library when my phone exploded with notifications. Someone had posted a video on social media, cleverly edited footage that seemed to show me planting evidence in Sage's room. The video went viral within hours. Framed roommates started trending. People who knew nothing about the situation were choosing sides based on a 2-minute clip. I watched in horror as the narrative shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't the victim who'd exposed a fraud. I was the jealous roommate who destroyed an innocent girl's life. The fact that the video was obviously edited didn't matter. People believed what they wanted to believe. Sammy and her computer science friends worked frantically to prove the video was fake. They found the source footage, security camera clips that had been manipulated and spliced together. But debunking a lie always takes longer than spreading one. The administration stood by me, but the court of public opinion was brutal. I couldn't walk across campus without hearing whispers. Some students openly confronted me, accusing me of being the real villain. Then something unexpected happened. The students Sage had blackmailed started speaking up. One by one, they posted their stories online. Than shared his emails with Sage. Daniel posted the threats she'd sent. Endra released the video Sage had used to control her. The tide began to turn. As more evidence emerged, the edited video was exposed as a desperate fabrication. The cybersecurity firm released their technical analysis, showing exactly how the footage had been manipulated. But the real knockout blow came from Sage herself. In her hubris, she'd recorded a confession of sorts, a voice message to one of her remaining allies, bragging about how she'd destroy that scholarship nobody, and laughing about accessing my foster records. The ally, realizing the legal jeopardy they were in, immediately turned the recording over to authorities. Within 48 hours, Sage was arrested. The charges were serious enough that bail was set high, higher than even her parents were willing to pay. For the first time in her life, Sage faced consequences she couldn't buy or manipulate her way out of. I sat in my dorm room, exhausted but vindicated. The website attacking me was taken down. The viral video was flagged as misinformation. My reputation, while bruised, was recovering. Mrs. Chen called me back to student affairs. "Your position is waiting for you," she said, with a raise. "You've shown incredible integrity through all of this." As I walked across campus to accept my job back, I noticed something different. Students nodded at me with respect. Some stopped to offer support or share their own stories of standing up to bullies. I'd survived Sage's campaign of destruction not by stooping to her level, but by maintaining my integrity and letting the truth speak for itself. It hadn't been easy. There were moments I'd wanted to give up, to run away, to fight dirty like she had. But I'd learned something valuable. Authenticity is its own power. Sage had spent years building a house of cards, while I'd built something real. Genuine relationships, honest achievements, and a reputation based on truth. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart raced. Was Sage somehow reaching out again? But it was Mrs. Harrison. "Thank you," the message read. "You did what we should have done years ago. Sage is getting help now. Real help, not lawyers and fixers. Maybe she'll finally learn." I tucked my phone away and headed to my shift at student affairs. There would be other students who needed help, other situations requiring someone who understood what it was like to not belong. But I belonged now. Not because I'd changed who I was, but because I'd refused to. The next morning, I walked into student affairs to find chaos. Mrs. Chen was on 3 phone calls simultaneously, while other staff members rushed between offices carrying stacks of files. She waved me over frantically. "We have a situation," she said after hanging up. "The board of trustees is meeting in an hour. Mr. Harrison called an emergency session about the scholarship fraud." My stomach tightened. Board meetings meant serious consequences, and with Sage's father on the board, anything could happen. They want you there, Mrs. Chen continued, as a witness. Can you handle that? I nodded, though my hands trembled slightly. Within minutes, we were walking across campus to the administration building's top floor, where the board convened. The hallway outside the meeting room buzzed with tension. Parents in expensive suits clustered in small groups, whispering urgently. Mr. Harrison stood apart from the others, his face carved from stone. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, but exhaustion. The board secretary ushered us into a wood-paneled room where 12 trustees sat around a massive table. Dean Williams was already there, along with the university's legal counsel and several other administrators. Let's begin, the board chair announced. We're here to address the systematic fraud perpetrated by Sage Harrison, including the misappropriation of need-based scholarship funds. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Sage's schemes. Dean Williams presented evidence of the fake scholarship, how Sage had forged financial documents to qualify for aid meant for students like me. The total stolen from the scholarship fund exceeded $30,000 over 2 years. When my turn came to speak, I simply laid out the facts. The party planning expenses she never repaid, the students she'd scammed, the harassment campaign after her exposure. I kept my voice steady, professional. Mr. Harrison sat through it all in silence, his knuckles white as he gripped the table edge. When the evidence presentation concluded, he finally spoke. I motioned to reimburse the scholarship fund in full, he said quietly, from my personal accounts. Today, the board exchanged glances. The chair cleared his throat. Mr. Harrison, given your position on this board and your daughter's actions, we need to discuss your continued involvement. I'll be submitting my resignation effective immediately, Mr. Harrison replied, after the check clears. The meeting continued with discussions of new oversight measures and fraud prevention protocols. They asked for my input on protecting vulnerable students. I suggested mandatory financial literacy workshops and a confidential reporting system for suspected scams. As we filed out, Mr. Harrison approached me. The full amount Sage owes you will be in your account within the hour, he said, along with compensation for your time and distress. I don't want— Please, he interrupted. Let me do this one thing right. Back at Student Affairs, Mrs. Chen pulled me aside. The board was impressed with your presentation. They're creating a new position, Student Advocate for Financial Security, full-time with benefits. They want you to consider it for next year. I stared at her, speechless. A real job, with real security, doing work that mattered. That afternoon, my phone rang constantly. Reporters had gotten wind of the board meeting. The story of a wealthy student scamming scholarship kids was spreading across social media. I ignored every call, every interview request. This wasn't about fame or revenge. Sammy found me in the library later, laptop open. The fake website about you is completely gone, she announced. Not just offline. The domain registration was terminated. Even cached versions are disappearing. How? Mr. Harrison's cybersecurity team. They're thorough. She paused. Also, Sage's arraignment is tomorrow. The prosecutor's office wants to know if you'll provide a victim impact statement. I thought about it as I walked back to my dorm. Part of me wanted Sage to face every possible consequence, but another part just wanted this to end. That evening, I found an envelope under my door. Inside was a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. I know you have no reason to read this, Sage's handwriting began, but I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far. What started as small lies to fit in became something I couldn't control. You were the only real friend I had, and I destroyed that because I couldn't admit who I really was. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to understand that I'm finally facing what I've done. My parents are making me pay back everyone, and I'm going to do it. Every penny. I'm also checking into a residential treatment program after my legal issues are resolved. You deserved better. Everyone did. I read it twice, then set it aside. Words were easy. Actions would tell the real story. The next few days blurred together. Students I'd never met stopped me on campus to share their own stories of feeling like outsiders. A group of scholarship students started a support network, asking me to help organize it. The financial aid office implemented new verification procedures based on my recommendations. Than, Daniel, McJonathan, and Endra all reached out separately, apologizing for their roles in Sage's schemes. The administration's amnesty program had freed them from her blackmail, but the guilt lingered. I told each of them the same thing. We all make mistakes when we're desperate. A week after the board meeting, I was called to the dean's office again. This time, Dean Williams was smiling. The Harrison family has established a new scholarship fund, he announced, for students from foster care backgrounds. They've asked you to be on the selection committee. I sank into the chair, overwhelmed. From being mocked for my background to helping others with similar stories, the reversal felt surreal. There's more, Dean Williams continued. The board approved funding for a peer mentorship program. First-generation and low-income students paired with juniors and seniors who understand their challenges. We'd like you to help design it. I accepted immediately. This was bigger than just my story now. The legal proceedings moved forward steadily. Sage pled guilty to multiple charges including fraud, identity theft, and harassment. The judge sentenced her to 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service at organizations serving low-income families, and mandatory psychiatric treatment. She was also banned from any university campus for 5 years. I didn't attend the sentencing, but Sammy did. She reported that Sage looked different. Designer clothes replaced with simple courtroom attire, perfect makeup gone, reality finally written on her face. The restitution checks arrived as promised. Not just the $347.83 from the party, but compensation for every expense I'd covered, every dollar she'd borrowed, plus interest and damages. The total was more than I'd ever seen in my bank account. I used some of it to buy a new laptop. Not secondhand, but not extravagant either. The rest went into savings for graduate school. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sage's money funding the education she'd tried to sabotage. One afternoon, while working my shift at Student Affairs, a nervous freshman approached the desk. She clutched a folder of financial aid forms, worry etched on her face. I don't understand these forms, she admitted, and I'm scared to ask for help because everyone else seems to know what they're doing. I recognize that fear, that sense of not belonging. I spent an hour walking her through each form, explaining the process, sharing resources. When she left, relief had replaced the worry. Mrs. Chen watched from her doorway. You're good at this, she observed, making people feel seen. The semester wound down with a mix of final stress and future planning. The student advocate position was officially mine for next year. The peer mentorship program launched with 20 pairs of students. The new scholarship fund received hundreds of applications. I packed up my single room slowly, no longer in a rush to escape memories. campus. The space that had once felt too empty now felt like a sanctuary I'd earned. On my last day, I stopped by the campus cafe. The barista, who'd witnessed my transformation from counting pennies to confidently ordering, smiled. "The usual?" she asked. "Actually," I said, "make it 2. There's a freshman on my hall who's been living on dining hall coffee." As I walked back with the drinks, I passed the spot where I'd first met Ailey. More freshmen toward the campus, some clutching secondhand bags, wearing thrift store finds, trying to blend in with the wealth around them. I thought about stopping, about offering advice or reassurance, but they'd find their own way, just as I had. And if they needed help, I'd be here next year. The freshman's face lit up when I knocked with the coffee. "How did you know?" she asked. "Lucky guess," I said, remembering my own first year. "Also, here's my email. If you need anything next semester, navigating financial aid, finding cheap textbooks, or just someone who gets it, reach out." That evening, I submitted my final report on Sage's fraud network to the administration. 12 students blackmailed, 37 scammed, over $50,000 stolen through various schemes. But also, every victim reimbursed, systems reformed, and support networks established. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart no longer raced at these. Sage was serving her sentence. Her harassment campaign ended. "This is Elise Harrison," the message read. "Sage's younger sister. I'm starting college next year, and I wanted you to know, I won't be anything like her. I've seen what lies cost. Thank you for stopping her before she destroyed more lives, including her own." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "Everyone deserves a fresh start. Good luck." As I carried my boxes to the car I'd borrowed for move out, other students waved goodbye. Some I knew from classes, others from the scandal's aftermath, but they all knew my story now, not as gossip, but as proof that truth could win. My secondhand mini fridge sat by the door, ready for another student who needed it. The thrift store bedding was washed and folded, donated to the emergency fund for students in crisis. I kept only what I needed, passing forward what I could. The drive home felt different than previous years. No shame about returning to a small apartment. No dread about summer jobs to afford next semester. Just anticipation for what came next. That night, in my childhood bedroom, I opened my laptop to find hundreds of emails. Students asking advice, parents thanking me for exposing the fraud, organizations inviting me to speak about supporting low-income students. I closed the laptop without answering any of them. There would be time for that later. For now, I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Not about Sage or scandals or survival, but about the freshmen who'd arrive next year, scared and alone, convinced they didn't belong. About the systems we'd built to catch them when they stumbled. About the truth that no one had told me. Belonging isn't about what you can afford or where you come from. It's about refusing to let anyone make you small. My phone lit up with one final message. Mrs. Chen, sending details about summer training for the student advocate position, orientation for new mentors, planning meetings for the scholarship committee. I smiled, setting the phone aside. Tomorrow, the work would begin. Tonight, I'd sleep soundly in my thrift store sheets, no longer pretending to be anything but exactly who I was. The girl who'd exposed a fraud, who'd survived a smear campaign, who'd turned personal pain into systemic change. The girl who belonged.